I get back to the station and start processing my photos when I see something in the back window of the car. Zoom in. It's the woman's face twisted and broken, mouth open in what looks like a scream. Long haul truckers, what's the creepiest / most paranormal thing you've seen on the road at night? Well, I'm not a trucker, but a motorcyclist, which kinda makes it even more spooky. Drove home from my GFS house, just a 20 minutes ride, but it was 3 AM and the road goes through a forest without any street lights. So I ride through the forest, already giving everything my little 50cc dirt bike had in it back then, and suddenly on the side of the road, a freaking naked mannequin is standing. I saw it appear in my headlights and drove by it only doing like 60 km/h. It was scary as hell. A freaking mannequin standing there naked on the side of a dark road in a forest at 3 AM in the morning. Damn, I still get the shivers. A good friend of mine told me this story years ago. He is the stereotypical old big bad trucker. I've seen some weird stuff with him while driving in South Texas along the border. He never batted an eye, but while telling me this story he had goosebumps and a concerned expression, which from this guy is about the equivalent of a trembling lip and shit-stained pants. I'll tell this story in the first person as he told it to me. Years ago in the late 90s, I was on my way from the house, Central Texas, heading to Laredo to pick up a load. It was early morning, around 4 or 5. I had just come off a string of days at home, so I know I wasn't tired. I'm on one of those 2-lane winding roads in the absolute middle of bumfuck nowhere when I see something on the side of the road at the edge of my high beams. At first I just thought it was roadkill, as is usually the case. As I get closer, I see that it is roadkill, and there's someone crouching over the deer carcass. I remember thinking either this guy's taking the antlers as a trophy, or he's fucking sick. As I got closer still, I can now see that this guy's eating the fucking deer. He's pulling chunks of meat from the stomach and bringing them up to his face. At this point he stops mid-motion and looks up at me. Not at my truck, but at me. It stands up, and that's when I see that it's fucking huge, brown, and covered in hair. I remember thinking at this point, oh fuck, this thing is standing on the tiny shoulder looking at me. By this point, maybe 3 seconds have passed, and I'm about to the point in the road he's standing at. I didn't even think of stopping. In fact, I'm starting to lay on it and get the hell out of there. As I'm passing it, it's looking at me. Again, not at the truck. It's looking through the driver's side windshield at me. He obviously has the intelligence to know that there's a driver in here and knows where I'm sitting. As I start to pass him, I can still see its head above the hood of an old needle nose Pete. Old truck design, where the hood goes straight out from the windshield, known for being tall and difficult to see around. This thing is fucking giant. I remember seeing what looked like human intelligence in its eyes. It scares the shit out of me. My great uncle was a long haul trucker, and he swears that one time he was driving down the road to see 2 guys pull a rolled up carpet out of the trunk of their car and throw it in the river. Whether that's true or not I don't know, but it's still creepy nonetheless. My dad has several stories from hauling the hoe and driving trucks through Utah and Nevada. My favorite is from actually just in his pickup going through Utah. He said there was a light keeping pace with him out in the desert on a moonless night. It kept pace for a minute before it disappeared, and his truck turned off. He stopped and turned it on and pulled off at the next diner. The folks in the diner called it a common occurrence. The creepiest is when he was hauling logs in Idaho and was coming down from near Coeur d'Alene area during a snowy winter night. He was putting on chains before heading down steep grade and said all of the hair stood up on his body. It felt like there was something watching him. Halfway down the switchbacks he saw a large figure standing on a 20-foot tall embankment. As he got closer it jumped down, and the shoulders were as tall as the cab. In a single bound it leaped down and then leaped over to the other side of the embankment. At the time he thought it was a Sasquatch. Now he says it was probably a demon trying to make him crash. He didn't stop to remove the chains until he was well away from the mountain. Whoa, that actually reminds me of a story. I live in Spokane, which is about 45 minutes away from Coeur d'Alene. I was driving back from my aunt's in the dark one night and just hit a massive wall of fog. I turned the corner and a whole herd of deer come running down the road toward me. I slow down a lot so I don't hit them. Then after another few seconds I see a woman standing in the street facing away from me with dirty clothes. The area I was in is known to have meth heads and heroin addicts, so I cracked the window and called out to her and asked if she needed me to call anyone. As soon as I spoke her head whipped around and it looked like she was a burn victim. Huge lidless eyes, no eyebrows, Voldemort nose, and a mouth that looked like it was melted or sewn up or something. Then she ran off into the woods and I drove a lot faster than I should have home. Creepiest. Driving I-40 I-30 through Texas and Arkansas, I would see what looked like animals / faces popping out of the bushes, but longer than a glance proved nothing there. They had just paved the highway and there was hardly any traffic. I was dead tired. It was super dark. Highway hypnosis I suppose. Paranormal. When I went to local driving, my route ran near an air reserve base in Indiana, so you'd see planes and helicopters pretty often. One night, about 2 AM, I was headed to pick up another load when I saw a bright green light in the corner of my windshield. It was too low to be an aircraft. It moved pretty slowly, then darted and I lost sight of it behind some trees I drove by. Typical I saw a UFO shit, but I still think it was just a helicopter or a jet that I saw at the prefect angle that turned after a takeoff. The jet pilots have broken the sound barrier over town a couple times in the past. Sonic boom. So a jet flying abnormally isn't necessarily out of the realm of possibility. Just batshit crazy. Driving south on I-75 in the winter in Ohio, I witnessed a compact car like a Cobalt or similar get on the on-ramp to merge into I-75 north and lost control. They went sideways, fell at least 6 feet off the ramp, and onto the shoulder of the interstate landing on all 4 wheels, spun 360 degrees, and then proceeded to merge into traffic like it was fucking nothing. Blew my fucking mind. The CB radio was going fucking nuts for about 5 minutes. Holy shit, who else just fucking saw that, etc. First, middle of the night with a buddy and we pulled off to the side of the highway to take a piss and switch drivers. Nobody else around on the road. I walk to the side, pitch black, whip it out, and start to pee. My buddy is just stretching his back, or whatever. I heard something in the woods shake a tree. No other way to describe it. A tree about 30 feet away shook. Then I hear something big crashing through the woods coming straight for us in the car. My buddy and I don't even say anything. He dives in the driver's side and I jump through the passenger window, pants still down. He floors it out of there, legs and pants dangling outside. Never did see anything in the rear view mirror, but there was something out there coming at us. My buddy likes to say he heard me stop peeing when that tree shook. Second, I was solo somewhere in West Virginia, again middle of the night. I got off an exit, one of those long curvy ones. I saw lights before I got off and assumed it was exit stuff, or maybe even construction. Get to the exit and it's not construction, it's a ton of Army or National Guard guys. The exit was lit up brighter than daytime, so many lights set up pointing everywhere. The army guys were completely decked out, gas masks on and assault rifles. They were sprinting around. One guy at the corner was frantically waving me through to get back on the highway. I gunned it out of there, looked in the news later, and didn't see anything. No idea what was going on that night. This is my father's story and he wasn't a long-haul trucker, but rather a 18-year-old gas station attendant in the late 70s. And without a certain long-haul trucker I probably wouldn't be here. The gas station was 24 hours and my dad was the only one working the night shift, 11 to 7 I think. A guy comes in and just gives him the creeps. Seems sketchy. He was wearing tight jacket / pants and you could tell he had something in his pants under the jacket. It was during the summer and was warm, so why is he wearing a jacket to begin with? It was later confirmed he was on drugs. A lot of truck drivers used this station as it was the only one open 24 hours for a long stretch of the highway. They also had a big lot where they let truckers park and sleep or take a break. On this night at this time it was just my dad, sketchy dude, and one trucker in there he kinda knew, as in, came in frequent enough to be conversational, and asked if he'd stay in the station and hang out until sketchy dude left. Well, after looking at the stocked shelves for several minutes, while sneaking peeks at my dad behind the counter, the sketchy guy eventually looked fed up, and got into his blue car and sped off. Cool trucker guy hung out with my dad a little longer until another couple of guys came in. To use the booths they had to eat a sandwich. I should also point out this was pretty middle of nowhere rural southeast United States in the 1970s. CB and landline was it. My dad only had a landline in the store. Dad did not have any protection or weapon of any kind. So the hours pass, and my dad had shaken off the paranoia when all of a sudden this truck driver guy in a car comes hauling ass into the lot, jumps out, and sprints into the store hollering he needs a phone. He didn't have a CB, nor did he see a phone at the other station. He also wasn't familiar with the area and my dad's station was the first place he found. Calls 911 to report that he had walked in on a gas station 40 miles back, next closest station, to find the attendant shot and dead. No one else around. And the only other piece of information is that a blue car was speeding out of the lot when the trucker pulled in. Apparently they eventually apprehend the guy in the blue car. My dad confirms it was sketchy dude from earlier in the night, and they charge him with murder and armed robbery. To the long haul trucker who waited around with my dad that night, thanks, and hope you're keeping it real. Also worth adding, that apparently sketchy guy in blue car was already a bad apple who was either being looked for, or on probation or something. He was in the system. My grandfather told me the story about how he was driving west to east along an empty stretch of road in southern South Dakota. He stopped at a stop sign at an intersection with nothing in sight, no buildings and no other vehicles. Then there was a bright light that hit him. He looked up and saw a bunch of blinking lights. Next thing he knew, he was at the counter of a diner about an hour down the road. It was about 6 hours later, and he had no idea what had happened. He asked the person at the diner when he came in, and the guy told him he came in about 10 minutes ago and just started drinking coffee without talking much. My grandpa told him what had happened, and the guy said something like, "Yep, that happens around here sometimes." Nothing weird ever happened to him again. He avoided that area for the rest of his life. He said he doesn't believe in aliens and doesn't know what happened, but I had a suspicion he thought he had been abducted and just never accepted it. He told me never to tell this story to other people, but he died years ago, and most of the people who knew him are dead, so I figured it was okay. My dad has told me this story a couple times and each time it always kind of weirds me out. He is not a trucker, but when he was in the military one night him and a buddy went out to get food. About halfway into their drive down a dark road my dad and his buddy noticed a woman in a red dress with black hair walking. My dad and his buddy found it odd because it didn't seem safe and it wasn't that warm. My dad said deep down he knew stopping was a bad idea and so they drove by a little more slowly to get a glimpse to see if she needed help. As they drove by my dad and his friend both swear she has no face. Instead there was just a black hole, as if she had been in a wreck and her face was taken off. It freaked them both out so badly my dad floored it, and when they stopped to eat both of them agreed they saw the same thing. Come to find out a woman had been killed earlier that year in an accident. They were talking about it when a stranger told them the sightings of the woman were actually common. I'm not one to believe in the paranormal, but the story is still kind of weird. I was driving through the back roads of Arkansas around 3 AM. Suddenly I hit a dense fog bank. It was so thick that I knew I should have pulled off the road because I could barely see in front of me, but sometimes pulling over can be just as dangerous. So I slowed to about 20 miles per hour and put my hazards on. I see no other cars coming from the other way or behind me. After about 15 minutes I start seeing humanoid shadows illuminated by my headlights darting around the sides of the road and across it. It made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I saw maybe 5 or 6 of them. Never got a good look. All I saw was shadows darting back and forth, but they were definitely human shaped. Needless to say I was freaked out and wanted to get away. I speed up a bit and, after about 5 minutes I came out of the fog bank. It ended just as suddenly as it came. I speed away at my allotted 65 miles per hour and didn't stop till the sun came up. I worked for a TV station back in the early 2000s. I traveled with some of the reporters to calls, to do still photography for web, and assist the reporter/photog team if needed. I was basically an on-site producer. We normally didn't cover traffic too much, but one of the main arteries out of the county was completely closed due to an accident, so we spent like 30 minutes going down dirt roads and backcountry lanes to get around it and to the site. to cover why half the county was basically locked down. Only a few bridges. I get there, and old Lincoln had run a stop sign, resulting in it getting T-boned by a massive dump truck. When we go there, EMT, fire, and police were on the scene, but no one was moving fast at all. No rush to clear the scene or anything. That means fatality and possible criminal investigation. I start shooting scenes of the traffic, a few tasteful wide shots showing the wall of traffic stretching out as far as the eye can see, etc. But for records, I also shot a shot of the dump truck and car, so that when they write the story they can get the details correct, not something for the public. The reporter shoots a piece, we get statements from the cops on scene, and go on to the next story. I get back to the station and start processing my photos when I see something in the back window of the car. Zoom in. It's the woman's face, twisted and broken, mouth open in what looks like a scream. That face has haunted me for the rest of my life. I've done stories about killers. I've done a story where a bus full of high school kids fell 30 feet off an overpass, killing 4 of them, even saw them screaming coming out of the wreckage. Nothing comes close to that woman's face.